Um, so, Joe, it's great to catch up now that you are stateside, I think is the sort of how the cool kids would describe it. And like both John and I are really interested to hear about the Envy. Um, you'd call it a camp. I'm going to call it an offsite. So, in our world, it will be a company offsite. In your world, it's a training camp. And we're just really curious to hear about like you all got together for the first time. It's not really a team until you've formed up. And so that forming process, like, how did it go? How did they prime it? Um, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny actually because I think yesterday I was just thinking about this kind of like, oh, we actually just did like a basically a corporate offsite weekend. That's what it was. But no, it was kind of interesting. We met just outside of Salt Lake, where I'm staying, then drove 5 hours down south to St. George. So straight away, it's like you've got 5 hours in a car with somebody you've never met, stopping at for breakfast. And then it was just like not really much was said. It was pretty much everyone just stays in one massive house. Everyone hang out, like play basketball in the garage. We did Olympics, like garage Olympics the first day. Went for a ride. Was encouraged to jump in the pool. Like just was pretty much told have fun and don't stress about training. And the first night it was kind of I'd say half of them had met each other before from working with each other in the past, but half of us were completely new. So the first night it was like inevitably a little bit. I can't think of the word. It was a little not edgy, but nobody really knew what like where people's sense of humor was, or almost like a tiny bit awkward. And then by the third night, Sarah was up. I think we was up until 12:30, 1 o'clock, just chatting absolute rubbish, like in the games room upstairs, talking about everything from how one of the guys did Tour Divide, which is this massive race across Canada, to I don't know previous relationships and what the targets are, dream cars, just like rubbish what you talk about after midnight. And it went from kind of having no idea who these people were to forming much closer bonds, which, considering we're going to be on the road so much together racing, it's kind of the best way to do it because there's so much stress around races that you don't really get to know people. It's just a quick wave. Um, so no, I think all teams and all organizations, it's like a very, very worthwhile thing to do, which is pretty much my first time doing it
And the
too.
Garage
So
Olympics.
no, it
So
was
Garage Olympics sounds cool. Was that did that erupt spontaneously, or was it like an kind of organized, prompted?
I was pure spontaneously. We had a games night planned, but like card games. But Neil, the big boss, forgot to bring any cards, which was a slight oversight for card games. Um, and then when we turned up to the Airbnb, it was like the garage was just full of games. Like there was air hockey, table tennis, like the basketball game, and then some other American thing which I've seen in movies but never played myself. Connect Four, and we just walked through the garage and was like, oh, let's do this instead. Um,
Cool.
and yeah, it was paired off into teams of two. Everyone played each other, and that was that. It was really like it was the whole weekend was proper low key, and there was never really any stress. It's like apart from we leave at 10 or we leave at 9, whatever time we'd leave to go on the bike, that was the only thing which was kind of a schedule. Um, and even on the last day, we sat down and had a basically a product presentation. It was like, this is the product, but this is also why you're here. And as in, this is your target for the year, which most brands don't do. They're just like, you do the onboarding call individually, and then almost sometimes teams you're forgotten about. Um, Whereas Envy were like, we want you to learn everything about the product. So, just as much as, say, customer service, like you need to know how much the wheels weigh, you need to know this, you need to know that. And it was one of those things, that was probably the first time in camp where it was a little bit, right, this has been fun, but this is your job, remember that. But it was done in a good way as well, and it was almost done in a way that you need to learn this because in a year time when we go to renewals, this is partially what you're judged on as well. And just no BS. Like everything was straightforward to the point, no hiding, which which I very much appreciate. But the big boss is an ex-pro bike racer, so I think that's probably why we're on similar pages with a lot of things.
Nice. So it sounds like they were quite intentional about um, ensuring that you guys are all on the same page. Like, there's a certain amount of product knowledge in this case that is expected. This is the direction we're headed in this season. Like, this is where we want to get to at the end. Not in terms of results, but in terms of like the contribution that you've made, um, and like the value that you're expected to bring. Let's have clarity on that. Nice.
Exactly. It started with like race results. Neil pretty much started with race results are great. It's why we're all here, but it's not the be all and end all. And we kind of got to remember that Enve, they sponsor UAE Team Emirates with Tadej Pogacar, who wins every bike race every weekend. So me winning Mid South Gravel this weekend, which we'll come on to, yes, it's big for me, and yes, it's big in the US. But in terms of global sales, it doesn't really move the needle for Envy. So there's a lot of other things which I could be doing, stroke can be doing. And interestingly, they do see both sides, say sponsoring UE and Pogacar just as important as working with those guys, but they're very different kind of KPIs, I suppose you'd almost say in a way.
Yeah. Nice. Different KPIs for different. Uh, yeah, that makes sense. How was the whole event primed, Joe? And what I mean by that is, like, did you have communications in advance of the event that went beyond just the logistics of the event, that were trying to give you the information that you need to consider in advance, or was it just like, right, you need to be here at this time?
I think the most important thing which they did, which a lot of other teams and sponsors haven't done in the past, they were very deliberate by this is not a training camp. This is a content camp, stroke a get to know everyone camp. Even on the first day we arrived, the videographer came over to us all individually, kind of quietly, and was like, just so you know, we're here for 3 days. We're going to be out on the bike for 3 hours, but maybe it'll only be an hour of riding per day. Like there's photos, there's videos, there's the goal of this weekend is content and get to know people. It's not increase your threshold. And I think that was really important because I've been on camps in the last couple of years where sponsors have tried to do both and it just doesn't work and both sides end up getting annoyed. So the fact that everybody kind of knew on day one that the next 3 days is effectively just a rest block, fun block was really important. And I just think that messaging around the camp was, again, it kind of goes into my whole thing of no BS. It's like if the company side knows it's not going to be a training camp, why try and hide behind that? Like we work for them, just be upfront. They were upfront, we knew exactly what we were getting. So like one day we were an extra hour home to make up for it. Then I just adjusted my weekend and I had a bigger training weekend. But I think the correct messaging and not trying to appease is the wrong word, but not trying to pretend it's going to be something it's not was really, really important and
Yeah,
something which I think a lot can can learn from.
just say that again, Joe. We lost your internet a bit.
So yeah, sorry, my internet paused there. I was saying just being very much aware of what the goal of the camp is and then sharing that with the team and not trying to hide behind something it's not is super duper important because it just means everyone's on the same page. Everyone knows the goal and ultimately it doesn't create any animosity because if you tell riders are going to be able to train for 5 6 hours and they can't, there's going to be one side of the house which is really annoyed, and that wasn't the case, so it was perfect.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm hearing is that they were really intentional about doing one thing really, really well. And that one thing, it sounds like it was emphasizing like building relationships at this early point in the season, and not trying to, do several things all in one camp. And that like quite often, John and I would have been at offsites where it's like, oh yeah, we want to build relationships and we want to set performance expectations and we want to review your last quarter and we want to review, two key accounts. And they're really different things. And so like not having riders turn up thinking, oh right, I need to be, performing on the bike in this camp. It's like, no, that's not important here. We want you to invest the time in binding together as a team, which is quite cool. Nice.
Exactly. And I think also it's one of those things having everyone together makes both mainly the rider, like in the past I've gone, oh, at Envy or at Rebel, and you kind of just talk to it as a brand of a whole, not as the people. And when you're together on an offsite or whatever, you kind of realize that Envy is not, this sounds really dumb. There's people behind the brand,
Yeah.
and like those people are actually real people, not necessarily just people with a nine to five who go to the office and you only see them in the office. You get to know them. So when I'm speaking to a guy called Chris to get my wheels sent, I now know him an awful lot better than I did last week, and he's not just a blank name on my email address. And
Yeah.
just small things like that kind of, I think, change your, not that it changed how you work with them because you're always professional, but it just makes the relationship a little bit different, which pays dividends in the longer term.
Yeah. Nice. Uh, do you want to ask Joe about this weekend, John, just so we've got a different voice for the questions?
Um, yeah, I'm kind of curious. You mentioned already it's going to be mid-south. First thing I'm curious about before we get into like, what you're actually expecting this weekend is we talked in the past about like last year was very much about a learning year, and now it's putting that learning into practice. So, how's that gone for you? You know, what's different this time around compared to mid-south last year?
I think I feel slightly more relaxed this year. Although I was going to say I know the course, but they've changed 85% of the course, which is a bit of a pain in the butt. But it's just knowing, like, I can already picture in my head what the start line looks like. I can already picture where to do groceries and even just coming out earlier. So I'm not jet lagged coming out, and I feel a lot more relaxed over here. Whereas last year, it kind of felt like this one massive adventure, almost overwhelming. I was almost living in my own overwhelming adventure. That sounds really stupid, but it didn't feel real at times. Whereas now, I think because I've come out early, I've got that little bit behind me, but equally not everything's new anymore. So last year I was battling both with new races and just being in the US for so long. Like that was new to me. Whereas this year it's all kind of done it before. It doesn't really knock me. There's still a few things that surprise me about being over here, but um, as a whole, it's pretty similar. Um, Mid South, it's one of those like I can't remember where I came last year, 11th, 12th, and I just don't know what to expect for this weekend. Like I'm kind of petrified because I've been up at altitude and I've just been getting my ass absolutely kicked by the thin air up here. So whereas last year when I came out, I had this very specific like I had a great ride at Centerville and Girona, and then I whacked out an amazing power test. So I was like, all my data is great. This year I've just been sitting on top of a mountain doing really bad numbers because no oxygen. So while like I'm more comfortable with the logistics side of things this year and I feel much more relaxed. I'm a lot more apprehensive of apprehensive probably the right word about performance because I'm just like I fly down to sea level tomorrow and I'm like fingers crossed all goes well. Um, but no, it is nice and it's I'm kind of remembering I've got to like this was my favorite race last year, both on and off the bike. So very much I want to keep reminding myself that and enjoy it and not kind of get lost in the whole first race of the year palaver.
Mhm. And like speaking to that, I think is an element to kind of keep in mind. It's um, yes, the experience at altitude changes things, but confidence should come from, you know, you've followed the process, you know what the process was, you've done it. So, you know, if you follow the process, good things will come as a consequence.
Exactly. And I think this weekend is going to be all about mud, unfortunately. We know what happened, when was it now, 18 months ago with unbound mud last time, but apparently they changed the course and it goes to like more boggy areas. It has been dry, so I kind of got my fingers crossed, but no, there's always something which throws a spanner in the works over here. It's not like the road where you just turn up and the tarmac's always the same. There's always a mud pit or a river crossing or something to throw everything off. So no, I'm very much looking forward to just kind of getting the race weekend process dialed. I mean, we had Sense of but I'm I've kind of scrubbed that from memory for numerous reasons. But no, I'm looking forward to getting the race weekend out and kind of getting cracking. It means the year has very much begun after this weekend. I think I just say as well, it's like it seems really overwhelming starting the year, but it's like I think last year everything we've spoken about has kind of come into play during less. Like I've actually had time to be bored, which was one of my main targets for last year. Like coming in this weekend, I'm flying in an extra day early just to give me a little bit more time to prep. And then it's like the race itself. Am I stressed about it? Hell yes. Like I'm actually probably the most scared I've ever been to start a race season. But it's like it's fair from my own kind of expectation on myself because there's kind of something humbling I realized while riding this weekend that at the end of the day, I'm the only one who 100% all in cares about this weekend and my own performance. And while a lot of people might think that's a bad thing, I take a lot of comfort from it. That I've learned from the lessons. I've done a big winter of training and I'm ready to go. It's like this past weekend was great with Envy. Real good fun. A big part of my job these days, but it's not the part of the job I absolutely care about and love, which is racing. And racing's back now, so I want to perform. I'm hopefully going to perform, but it's a very long season and one bad race, let's stand by. If this weekend goes bad, if I puncture, there's another 18, 19 races. And while I'm really scared, it's like bigger picture. It's like John said, if I'm still struggling by Christmas to use a football analogy, then maybe we sack the manager and call pull the alarm bells. But it's fine. Like I'm just looking forward to getting the ball rolling. The first ball rolling was coming out to the US. The second ball rolling is pinning a number on, and that's happening this weekend. And then we can start kind of come back to the drawing board or celebrate with champagne.
So, Joe, thanks so much for taking time out to just sort of dial us in a bit before your weekend. Really interested to hear about the Enve offsite camp. Things I heard there were how it was primed in advance and how they were really intentional about not trying to do too much, just making it really clear what the expectations were that allowed people to kind of block off some stuff. I don't need to worry about training this weekend. It's more about team bonding. That's cool. Um, and then just coming up for this weekend, like I was hearing, like value of experience. You know, the fact that um, you're going again this year and you already feel different about it. Just in terms of the environmental stuff that you're more comfortable with. And I think there might be a clue in there. We'd hear that about a lot of sports teams. You know, sometimes you have to go through a process where you're not going to perform at your best because everything's new. But then when you go back, you stand a better chance, which is quite cool. And then just managing self expectations, like not letting that voice in your head like put too much pressure on. And the fact is, you've done a ton of work. Preparation is really strong, and it's the work put in that hopefully breeds confidence this weekend. So yeah, go well.
Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. Speak next week from the other side of the race, I guess.
Yeah,
Yep.
awesome.